The jingle of a key in the lock startled me, and my hand froze over the vase of flowers I was arranging. Ethan, my husband, wasn't supposed to be home at 3 in the afternoon. The urgent meeting he'd mentioned must have been cancelled. I placed the last white lily into the crystal vase, adjusted a green leaf, and turned towards the door with a welcoming smile, the one I had ready for him every single day. But the smile froze on my face as the heavy oak door swung fully open. The sight that greeted me was Ethan. But he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a woman I had never seen before. She was slender, years younger than me, poured into a tight work dress that showcased every curve. They both looked flustered, their movements jerky and unnatural. Ethan's shirt was untucked on one side, while the woman's hair was a messy tangle, as if she'd just been in a struggle. Our eyes met, all three of us, in a suffocating silence. My entire world seemed to grind to a halt. Everything went white, a roaring in my ears like a million distant screams. Yet the air in our Chicago condo was so still I could hear the frantic drumming of my own heart. I saw pure panic in Ethan's eyes. His mouth fell open as if to speak, but no words came out. The woman could only look down, her hands twisting the hem of her skirt until her knuckles were pale. In a situation like this, what was a woman supposed to do? Scream, slap them both across the face, collapse in a sobbing heap and run away? I did none of those things. The moment, stretched into an eternity, finally passed. I took a deep, deliberate breath, pulling my scattered senses back into focus. The smile that had been frozen on my face slowly softened again, melting back into its familiar shape. It was the same gentle smile as always, but if you looked closely, you'd see it never reached my eyes. "You're home early, Ethan," I said, my voice unnervingly steady. I was just about to start on dinner. I shifted my body slightly, clearing a path for them to enter. Ethan looked even more shocked by my reaction than by being caught. He stared at me as if I were a ghost. But eventually, he had no choice but to nod mutely and step inside, the woman trailing behind him like a shadow. I didn't look at them again. I turned and walked directly to the kitchen at the back of the condo, leaving them to stew in the heavy atmosphere of the living room. The second I was out of their sight, the smile vanished. I gripped the cold marble countertop to keep myself from collapsing. My legs were trembling so violently I could barely stand, but I forced myself to remain upright. I could hear their faint, frantic whispers from the other room, but I ignored them. I pulled out a heavy wooden cutting board. I selected the sharpest chef's knife from the block. Then, I began to chop the onions I had set out for dinner. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythmic sound of the blade hitting the board echoed through the quiet kitchen. It was the only sound in the silence, a metronome that drowned out the shrieking in my soul. With every press of the blade into the onion, I imagined it was the heart of the man who had betrayed me. And with every fine chop, I imagined my pain being minced into oblivion. But that was today, the beginning of the end. If you were to turn back the clock just a few weeks, my world was still as beautiful and perfect as a storybook painting. My days began at 6 a.m. The morning sun rising over Lake Michigan, glinting off the surrounding skyscrapers, and pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our luxury condo in River North, was the only alarm clock I needed. I would slip out of bed as quietly as possible, so as not to disturb Ethan, who slept soundly beside me. The first thing I did was make coffee. The rich aroma of freshly ground beans would fill the kitchen, waking our home from its slumber. I knew exactly how Ethan liked it: black, no sugar, with a bitter edge to sharpen his mind for the long day of work ahead. Then came breakfast. I didn't just cook. I poured my heart into every dish, whether it was a hearty bowl of steel-cut oatmeal on a cold morning or a full spread of eggs Benedict and bacon when he needed extra energy. The table was always set to perfection. Matching plates, polished silverware, a glass of fresh squeezed orange juice, and the latest issue of the Wall Street Journal. "You're my anchor, Elara," Ethan had told me one morning, looking at my reflection in the mirror as he knotted his silk tie. His eyes were full of love and admiration. "Without you managing everything here, I'd never be able to fight the dragons out there." His words made my heart swell. I smiled and walked over to him, straightening the collar of his custom tailored shirt. "It's my job," I'd said softly. "The job of a wife." It was a role I had embraced with my entire being since we married 5 years ago. I still remembered the day I met him. I was a promising literary translator with a bright future. My work was to breathe life into words. He was a brilliant young architect, brimming with dreams and ambition. We met at a book launch for a novel I had translated. We talked for hours, and that was the beginning of everything. Ethan was warm, intelligent, and utterly charming. He brought color to my world, which had previously been filled only with black and white text. He taught me to see the beauty in skylines, to understand the language of lines and form that had once seemed meaningless. Our love grew quickly, beautifully. When he asked me to marry him, he promised we would build our future together. He said he wanted me to be the foundation of his success, the warm home he could return to after a wearying day. And with a heart full of love, I willingly gave up my own professional dreams. I turned down a prestigious scholarship to pursue a master's degree in comparative literature abroad. I gave up everything to fully become the wife of an architect named Ethan. The first few years were sweet and perfect. I found joy in taking care of him, in watching his small architectural firm grow from a handful of employees into a renowned, award-winning company. I was so proud of him, and I believed my sacrifice was worth it. He always took me to his industry events, introducing me with pride. "This is my wife, Elara." Then he would lean in and whisper to his colleagues, "The best 5-star restaurants in Chicago can't compete with what she makes at home." Those compliments made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. I have forgotten my own dreams. I was content in my role behind the scenes, the silent partner who allowed him to shine. I thought this was the true happiness for a woman. But when did it all start to change? I'm not sure. Perhaps it was so gradual I didn't notice at first. Maybe it was about 6 months ago. Ethan started coming home later. The man who used to be home for dinner every night started missing it once a week, then twice until it became a rare occasion. Emergency meeting. "Elara, I'll be late. Don't wait up. A client is taking the team out. I can't say no. I have to pull an all-nighter to finish these blueprints for the morning." His excuses always sounded plausible, and I chose to believe them without question, because I trusted him. I trusted the love he had always shown me. But then, the small anomalies began to pile up. He became intensely private with his phone, always placing it face down when he was with me. He would often step out onto the balcony to take calls. A few times, when I walked into a room, he would end a call abruptly, his face a mask of mild panic before smoothing into neutrality. "Who was that?" I once asked. "Oh, just a junior associate. A question about the project." "It's nothing," he'd reply, his voice even. But his eyes would flicker strangely. Our conversations grew shorter. He stopped telling me about his day at the office, stopped asking about mine. Physical intimacy dwindled. The daily hugs and kisses before he left for work faded into a perfunctory, passionless wave. I began to feel an invisible distance growing between us. Like a wall of clear glass I could feel but couldn't see. I tried to break it down by being even better, even more attentive. I cooked his favorite meals more often, made our home even more beautiful. I thought maybe he was just stressed from work. "Are you tired lately, Ethan? You seem a little worn out," I asked one night, concerned. As we sat watching TV in the living room, he looked away from the screen. "A little. Elara, work has been insane." He sighed heavily. "Thanks for worrying." And then he turned his attention back to the TV, leaving me with a hollow feeling and a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I started having sleepless nights. I'd pretend to be asleep when he came to bed, but as soon as I heard his steady breathing, my eyes would fly open in the dark. 1,000 thoughts would race through my mind. What did I do wrong? Did I displease him? Or was our love simply fading with time, like it did for so many other couples? I tried to push those thoughts away, telling myself I was overthinking. Ethan loved me. He would never cheat on me. But the more I tried to believe it, the more the seed of doubt in my heart grew. Without realizing it, I became paranoid. I'd secretly smell his shirts when he came home, searching for the scent of another woman's perfume. But I never found anything but his own cologne and the faint smell of coffee. I'd check his phone while he was in the shower, but there were never any suspicious texts or calls. He must be deleting everything. The thought made me feel pathetic. My identity as a perfect wife began to crumble. My beautiful world started to show hairline cracks, like a large mirror about to shatter. I kept trying to patch it up with the glue of my devotion, hoping one day the cracks would disappear and everything would be as it was. I started calling Maya, my only close friend, more often, just to vent my frustrations. "Are you sure you're not just overthinking it, Elara?" Maya would say, her voice laced with concern. "Guys get distant when they're stressed with work. It doesn't automatically mean he's seeing someone else." "I want to believe that, Maya. I really do," I'd reply, my voice trembling. "But a woman's intuition, it's telling me something is wrong." The way he looks at me, it's not the same anymore. So what are you going to do? She asked. I was silent for a long time. I don't know. I don't want to believe he could do this to me. I gave him my entire life. Maya. Tears began to stream down my face. Tears of confusion, hurt, and fear, the fear that my worst anxieties were true. And then one day, the first piece of concrete evidence appeared. It was a weekend afternoon. Ethan said he had to go to the office to pick up some urgent documents. I was home alone. While I was cleaning his home office, I accidentally knocked a stack of papers off his desk. As I bent down to pick them up, a small piece of paper slipped out from a file. It was a receipt from a high-end Italian restaurant in the West Loop, a place I had told him I wanted to try for months. But he always claimed he was too busy. The date on the receipt was from 2 nights ago, during dinner time. But that wasn't what made my heart stop. The bill was for a party of 2, and included an expensive bottle of Pinot Grigio, a wine I don't drink because I'm allergic to sulfites. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. I could barely breathe. My hands trembled, almost dropping the small receipt. What did this mean? Who did he have dinner with? A client. If it was a client, why go to such a romantic restaurant? Why order a wine I couldn't drink? 100 questions. But not a single one had a pleasant answer. I crumpled the receipt in my fist. The trust I had placed in him shattered in an instant. That night, when Ethan came home, I tried to act normal. But I couldn't. I couldn't look him in the eye. Every word he said, which once sounded so sincere, now felt like a sugar-coated lie. I didn't ask him about the receipt. I knew if I did, he would have a perfectly reasonable excuse, and I would be foolish enough to believe him again. No, I would not be a fool anymore. The pain from that day slowly morphed into a cold resolve that settled over my heart. I decided I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I began my secret plan. I installed a tracking app on his phone one night when he'd had too much wine, and fell asleep heavily on the couch. It was something I never thought I'd do, and I loathed the person I was becoming. But I had no other choice, and that led to today. This afternoon, I opened the app, my heart pounding. I saw the red dot representing Ethan's location move away from his downtown office. But instead of heading north towards our home, it went west, towards a residential building in Fulton Market, a place that was not on his way home at all. My heart sank. I knew I had to do something. I grabbed my car keys and drove out of our building, telling myself I was probably mistaken. Maybe he was visiting a friend or a client. But the closer I drove to the location, the more my hands shook on the steering wheel. Finally, I arrived in front of a sleek, modern condo building. And there it was, Ethan's black BMW, parked in a visitor spot. I parked my own car across the street, in a spot with a clear view of the entrance, and I waited. I just sat and waited, feeling numb and hollow. Nearly 2 hours passed. Finally, I saw him walk out of the lobby. But he wasn't alone. His arm was wrapped around the waist of the woman I had seen just moments ago at my front door. They were laughing intimately before walking directly to his car. The image was clearer than any words could ever be. It slammed the truth I had been running from right into my face. Tears fell silently, without a single sob. I didn't feel sad anymore. I was numb. All that remained was emptiness and a profound, crushing disappointment. I didn't follow him. I knew he would be heading home to play the part of the good husband once more. So I decided to drive home first to prepare his welcome. And that was why, when I opened the door to find him standing there with her, I didn't scream or rage. Instead, I gave them my coldest, most welcoming smile. Because I knew my war had just begun. The rhythmic thump of the knife against the cutting board continued. The sharp fumes from the onion I was dicing made my eyes water. But the tears streaming down my face weren't just from the onion. They were tears of defeat, of pain, of the brutal reality I had just witnessed with my own eyes. Everything I had believed in, everything I had dedicated my life to, had crumbled in an instant. The image of Ethan and that woman at our front door played over and over in my head, like a skipping record. His panicked eyes, her frightened posture, the suffocating silence, it was all real. I stopped chopping, dropping the knife onto the board with a clatter. I wiped the tears from my cheeks with the back of my hand. No, I couldn't stand here and cry. I had to be stronger. They were still in the living room, waiting for my judgment. Taking another deep breath, I gathered all my remaining strength, composed my face into a mask of placid indifference, and walked out of the kitchen. The atmosphere in the living room was still heavy and suffocating. Ethan sat on the long sofa, running his hands over his face repeatedly. The woman, Chloe, was perched on the edge of an armchair in the corner, not daring to lift her head. I walked to the refrigerator, calmly poured 2 glasses of water, and placed them on the coffee table in front of them. "Have some water," I said, my voice flat. "You must be in shock." My words seemed to be the trigger. Ethan looked up at me, his eyes red. "Alara, I'm sorry," he stammered. "It's not what you think. I can explain." I met his gaze directly. A faint, cold smile touching my lips. "There's no need to explain anything," I replied. "I understand everything perfectly." My calmness seemed to frighten and confuse him more than any outburst would have. He opened his mouth to say more, but I turned my attention to the trembling woman. "As for you," I said slowly and clearly, "I believe you have somewhere else to be. Don't you? This home is not your place." My polite but sharp words made her flinch. She glanced up at me with shame-filled eyes, then quickly stood up. I'm sorry," she whispered, grabbing her purse and practically running out the door without a single look back at Ethan. The front door clicked shut, leaving just the 2 of us. Silence fell again. But this was a different kind of silence. It was the quiet before a storm. Ethan stood and walked towards me, reaching for my hand. I snatched it away as if his touch were fire. "Alara, listen to me. Please," he begged. "I messed up. I was stupid. But I still love you. Alara. Only you." "Love?" I repeated his word, my voice dripping with scorn. "People who love each other don't do this, Ethan. They don't stomp on someone's heart until it's shattered. It was a mistake. Just a moment of weakness. It wasn't serious. You have to believe me," he pleaded. His excuse is pathetic. I shook my head slowly, feeling more pity for him than anger. "Stop, Ethan. Just stop talking. Nothing you say right now will make anything better. It only makes me feel more foolish for ever having trusted you." I looked deep into his eyes, the eyes I once thought were filled with love and sincerity. Now, all I saw was selfishness and deceit. "Tonight, I think it's best if you sleep somewhere else," I said evenly. "I need to be alone." "No, Alara. Don't send me away like this. We need to talk this through." His voice rose in desperation. "There's nothing left to talk about," I replied, a coldness in my tone that surprised even myself. "Everything is perfectly clear. Please leave before I lose my patience." My unwavering gaze and decisive tone finally made him stop. He was used to the old Alara, the gentle wife who yielded to his every wish. But that woman was gone. She died the moment he destroyed her trust. Finally, Ethan surrendered. He nodded slowly, defeated. "Fine, if that's what you want," he said, his voice softening. "But we're talking tomorrow." He turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the home that was once our heaven, now an empty hell. The moment I heard his car drive away, the dam of tears I had been holding back finally broke. I sank to the cold floor of the living room, letting out all the pent-up sobs. It was the sound of pure agony. My dreams, my perfect family, the love I cherished, everything was over. I cried until there were no tears left, only a hollow exhaustion in my body and soul. Slowly, I pulled myself to my feet and surveyed the home I had so lovingly decorated. Every corner, every inch, was saturated with our memories. The photo frames on the wall, filled with pictures of us from our dating years to our wedding day, our happy smiles seemed to mock me. The vase of white lilies I had just arranged, now they looked like funeral flowers. The sofa where we watched movies together, the dining chairs where we shared breakfast, the kitchen where I spent my days cooking for him with love. Every object was a monument to the failure of my marriage. I walked into our bedroom and opened the closet. His suits hung neatly next to my dresses. The lingering scent of his cologne, a scent I once loved, now made me nauseous. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where we had cuddled, where he had whispered countless words of love. He had probably whispered those same words to another woman, in another bed. The thought filled me with a disgusting revulsion. Grief slowly curdled into anger, and anger into a thirst for revenge. What did I do wrong? I dedicated my life to him, supported him, gave up my own dreams, and this was my reward? Cold, calculated betrayal? No, I would not let it end like this. I would not be the one left defeated and miserable. If he dared to destroy my life, I would make sure he tasted the same pain. I stood up and walked to the full-length mirror in the dressing room. I stared at the reflection of the woman with swollen eyes. tangled hair, and a face pale as death. Was this Alara? The vibrant woman full of dreams? How had I let myself become this? I looked deeper into my own eyes in the mirror, and beneath the pain, I saw a flicker of something else, a spark of strength, of pride, of a dignity that was not yet extinguished. That was right. I was not the old Alara anymore. The weak, submissive woman was dead. In her place stood a new woman, ready to fight for herself. I picked up my phone and dialed my best friend. Maya. Hello. Alara. What's up? It's late. Maya's surprised voice came through. Maya, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need you to do something for me. Of course, what is it? She asked, her tone shifting to concern. Do you know a really good divorce lawyer? There was a stunned silence on the other end. Alara, what happened? Did you and Ethan fight? I closed my eyes. The afternoon's events flashed before me again. But this time, it didn't hurt. Instead, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I caught him cheating. Maya, I said, my voice now cool and firm. I caught him red-handed. What? Maya exclaimed. Are you okay? How are you holding up? I'm okay, I replied. And it was true. I felt more okay than I had in months. I didn't call to cry. Maya, I called for help. I've made up my mind. I'm filing for divorce. Are you sure? Alara, Maya asked, wanting to be certain. More sure than I've ever been about anything. I said, my voice hard as steel. But I'm not just walking away with nothing. I will not be the pathetic woman who gets left with a broken heart and an empty bank account. He gave me this expensive lesson, and I'm going to make sure he remembers it for the rest of his life. Maya was silent again. But this time I knew she understood. You got it, my friend, she finally said. I'll send you the number of the best shark in the city tomorrow morning. And don't worry, you are not alone in this. Thank you, Maya, I said and hung up. I put the phone down and looked at myself in the mirror one last time. My eyes had changed. They were no longer swollen and weak. They were filled with determination and resolve. Ethan thought I was just a stupid wife who would forgive him after a few apologies. He thought I would stay to save face, to maintain my social status. He was so wrong. The smile I gave him this afternoon, it wasn't a smile of forgiveness. It was a declaration of war. And the surprise I was preparing in the kitchen, it was going to be more than just dinner. It was going to be his last supper in this house. The next morning, the air in the condo was still as cold and heavy as a morgue. I woke with puffy eyes from a night of crying. But my heart felt strangely calm, like the eerie quiet after a hurricane has passed, leaving only wreckage behind. I walked out of the bedroom at my usual time and found Ethan already waiting at the dining table. He hadn't slept either. His face was haggard and stressed. A mug of black caffeine he had made for mess out of my place setting. It was the first time in years he had made coffee for me first. He probably thought small gestures like this could erase the monumental sin he had committed. Alara, sit down, he said softly when he saw me. I said nothing, simply sitting in the chair opposite him. I didn't touch the coffee. I just stared at his face with empty eyes. I've been thinking all night, he began, breaking the silence. I was wrong. I was a complete bastard for hurting the best woman in my life. I admit it. I remained still, my face a blank canvas. Seeing my silence, he continued, his voice more urgent. But I need you to know. That woman, Chloe, she was just a colleague. A momentary lapse in judgment. I don't love her. The only person I love is you. Alara, please, can you forgive me? Give me one more chance to fix this. He reached across the table, trying to take my hand. But I pulled it back again, resting it in my lap. Finally, I spoke. Can you give me some time? My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. My head is just empty right now. It's too chaotic to think straight. My answer seemed to give him a sliver of hope. Of course. Alara, take all the time you need. I'll wait. I'll do anything to earn back your trust. I nodded slightly. Okay. The conversation ended there. I got up from the table and went to the kitchen to make breakfast, just like any other day, leaving him to cling to his own false hope. From that day on, my grand performance began. I slipped back into the role of the perfect wife. I continued to wake up early, cook his meals, manage the household flawlessly, and speak to him with the same polite tone. The only thing missing was the love and warmth in my eyes, a detail he seemed to conveniently overlook. Ethan, for his part, Tried hard to atone. He started coming home on time, making small talk, buying me flowers and little gifts. He was trying to turn back the clock to a time before his betrayal was exposed. He thought time would heal everything. He believed his efforts and feigned goodness would soften my heart and make me forget. He had no idea that beneath my placid smiles and seeming acceptance, a cold, meticulous plan was already in motion. Every day, after he left for work, I transformed from a docile homemaker into a private investigator. My first move was to meet with the lawyer Maya had recommended. We met at a quiet cafe in a discreet neighborhood. Ms. DeMarco was a sharp, intelligent woman in her late 40s who exuded confidence. After I told her my story, she looked at me and asked the most direct question possible. Ms. Hayes, what do you want from this divorce? I answered without a second of hesitation. I want everything I am legally entitled to, and I want him to be left with nothing. A flicker of approval showed in Ms. DeMarco's eyes. I appreciate your clarity, she said with a small smile. In that case, your first task is to gather as much evidence of his infidelity as you can. Photos, text messages, witnesses. We also need all his and your joint financial records, bank accounts, property deeds, car titles, any assets in his name alone. He's very careful with his phone. I told her. I've never found anything. Most cheaters use secret chat apps or have a second phone, she advised. But don't worry. Evidence isn't just on a phone. Start with his credit card statements. They often tell a very detailed story. Her advice was a revelation. Back home, I began my first mission. I knew where Ethan kept important documents, his office. I waited until late that night, pretending to be asleep. Once I heard his steady breathing, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed to his office. My heart pounded against my ribs. It was the first time I felt like a thief in my own home. But the guilt was quickly replaced by determination. I gently opened his desk drawer and found what I was looking for, a file of credit card statements from the past year. I quickly took photos of every single page with my phone, put everything back exactly as I found it, and crept back to bed. The next day, after he left, I scrutinized the photos. For the first 6 months, everything was normal. But in the last 6 months, the anomalies became glaring. There were frequent charges from expensive restaurants during dinnertime, places he never took me. There were charges for women's luxury goods, handbags, shoes, expensive cosmetics, and worst of all, there were recurring charges from a boutique hotel in the city, almost every week. On weekday afternoons when he was supposed to be at work, my hands trembled as I scrolled through the list. The pain stabbed at my heart again. But this time it was accompanied by a multiplying rage. How dare he use the money I helped him build to lavish gifts and hotel rooms on another woman? I documented every suspicious charge in a notebook. This was my first crucial piece of evidence. But it wasn't enough. I needed something more definitive. My next target was his computer. I had to wait for the right opportunity. It came on a Saturday afternoon when he said he was going golfing with clients. I knew it was a lie. The tracking app showed he was at that same condo in Fulton Market, Gainshaw's condo. I went into his office and booted up his laptop. Luckily, I knew his password. He used the same one for everything, my birthday. The irony was sickening. I started searching. At first, I found nothing. He must have deleted everything. But then I remembered Ms. DeMarco's words, people often forget to clear their trash bin, or file sins to the cloud. I opened his cloud storage folder. And there, I found it. A folder simply named Project X. But what was inside was anything but simple. It was filled with photos. Photos of Ethan and Chloe in various places. At restaurants, at the movies, at the beach, and the most disgusting of all, selfies of the two of them in a hotel bed, barely clothed. My heart stopped. I stared at the images, frozen. It felt like I'd been hit in the chest with a sledgehammer. The tears I thought had dried up came flooding back. So this was the truth I had been searching for. It was painful, but it was undeniable. I took a deep breath, quickly wiping my tears away. This was no time to cry. I copied the entire folder onto a flash drive I had prepared, cleared the computer's recent activity, and shut it down. I clutched the small flash drive in my hand. It wasn't just evidence, it was my weapon. Meanwhile, my outer life continued smoothly. I was still Ethan's perfect wife. I made dinner, asked about his work, and smiled whenever he brought home a guilt gift. My calm demeanor made him complacent. He thought the storm had passed and that I was slowly forgiving him. He started acting more relaxed, planning a vacation for us later in the year as if nothing had happened. Where do you want to go? Alara, how about Japan? You always said you wanted to see the autumn colors. He asked one evening over dinner. I looked up at him, a faint smile on my lips. That sounds nice, I replied. But in my mind, I was thinking, by then, we won't be together anymore. My conscience had been seared shut. Every forced smile, every feigned moment of ignorance, only strengthened my resolve. I was no longer the victim. I was a hunter, waiting for the right moment to strike. And that day was coming very, very soon. Weeks passed. The charade in our home continued flawlessly. Ethan was now fully convinced that I was in the healing phase and on the verge of forgiving him. His guard was completely down. He went back to his old habits, occasionally coming home late with the excuse of work, which I would pretend to accept without question. Everything was going according to the plan Ms. DeMarco and I had laid out. The evidence I had was strong. But she said it wasn't enough to achieve my goal of leaving him with nothing. We need to find any assets he might have hidden. She told me over the phone. Men like him often have an escape plan. He could have secret investments, or real estate purchased in his name alone, or even in her name. Her words sparked a thought. Ethan was smart and meticulous with money. It was highly likely he had financial plans I knew nothing about. My next mission was the most dangerous yet. I needed to find proof of these hidden assets. If he caught me, my entire plan would collapse. But I had nothing left to lose. He had destroyed my sandcastle. Now I would use that same sand to dig his grave. An idea, risky but brilliant, formed in my mind. That evening at dinner, I brought it up, my voice cheerful. Ethan, isn't the anniversary of your firm's big award coming up soon? He looked up, surprised I remembered. Yes, it is. Why? I was thinking, we should have a small dinner party to celebrate here at home. I proposed. We could invite your parents. It would be a nice way to honor your success. They'd be so proud. Ethan's eyes lit up. He was thrilled. Really? Alara, that's a great idea. I'd love for them to see the place. In that case, I added casually, you should invite the key team members who made the project a success. I'd love to cook for them as a thank you. I watched him as I said it, and I saw a flicker of hesitation. He knew exactly who was included in that key team. Are you sure? He asked weakly. Maybe just family is better. I feigned a little hurt. Why not? Don't I get to meet the people who work so hard for you? Or is there something you're hiding from me? My last words were an arrow to his heart. He immediately backpedaled. No, nothing to hide. If you want them here, I'll invite them. Chloe was a big part of that project's success. He had said her name. I smiled, a flicker of triumph hidden behind my placid expression. Wonderful. It's settled then. The bait was set, and the prey had walked right into the trap. 2 days later, the night of the dinner party, I spent the entire day cooking. I made his mother's favorite braised short ribs, his own favorite pan-seared scallops, and a dozen other impressive dishes. I wasn't just cooking. I was setting the stage. His parents arrived first, beaming with pride. The house is beautiful, dear, his mother said. You've made it such a lovely home. I'm so lucky to have you as a daughter-in-law. Ethan is the lucky one, his father added warmly. Their praise was a knife in my heart, but I smiled graciously. I just do my part. Soon, Ethan arrived with Chloe. She was dressed modestly, but her face was a mask of anxiety. She never imagined she'd have to face me like this again. I greeted them both with my widest, most welcoming smile. Hello, Chloe. Please, come in. I'm so glad we can finally meet properly. My words made both of them visibly uncomfortable, but they could only force tight smiles in return. At the dinner table, the atmosphere was, on the surface, joyous. His parents praised his success, attributing much of it to me, the woman behind the man. If it wasn't for Alara, Ethan wouldn't be where he is today. His mother said, taking a bite of the ribs. Delicious as always, dear. I accepted the compliment, then turned to his father. You've always been such a wonderful role model for Ethan, especially when it comes to family and your loyalty to Mom. I truly admire that. The first needle had been inserted. The table went quiet for a second. Ethan looked uneasy, quickly taking a bite of food to avoid my gaze. Then, I turned my attention to our special guest. You must be so brilliant at your job. Chloe, Your family must be very proud. Chloe flinched. Yes, well, she stammered. Do you have a boyfriend? I asked with a bright smile. A smart, beautiful young woman like you must have men lining up. The second needle. Driven deeper. Chloe's face went pale. She mumbled something incoherent and stared down at her plate, refusing to meet anyone's eyes, especially those of Ethan's mother, who was now looking at her with keen interest. I laughed lightly, pretending it was all a joke. Oh, don't mind me. Young people these days, so focused on their careers they have no time for love. I continued to play the perfect hostess, steering the conversation to safe topics. I served his parents, refilled Ethan's glass, and even offered Chloe a second helping of a spicy dish, smiling as I said, "You should try this. It's really good." My kindness was a slow, deliberate torture. When the evening ended, I walked them all to the door. After his parents left, only Ethan and Chloe remained, waiting for her Uber. I turned to Chloe. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad I got to know the key colleague my husband works with so closely. I hope we'll see each other again. I emphasized the words key colleague, and I saw fear in her eyes. She nodded mutely and scrambled into her ride as if fleeing for her life. Now, it was just us. Elara, he began, his voice laced with shame. Thank you for being so good to Chloe. I turned to him and smiled faintly. Why wouldn't I be? She's just your colleague. Isn't she? I walked back inside, leaving him speechless. That night, Ethan was visibly relieved. He thought he had dodged a bullet. He was convinced I knew nothing. His complacency was my golden opportunity. 2 days later, on a weekend, he announced he had to go into the office. I knew he was going to her condo. But this time, it didn't hurt. I was grateful. My target today was his office again. But this time, it was the locked metal filing cabinet in the corner. I had only ever seen him open it once or twice. That's where he kept his real secrets. The problem was the key. I searched everywhere. His desk, under the blotter, in his pen cup. Nothing. I went through the books on his shelf. Nothing. I started to panic. Then my eyes landed on a small wardrobe in the corner, where he kept old suits. It was a long shot. I started checking the pockets, one by one. In the very last suit, tucked deep in an inside pocket, my fingers brushed against a small, cold piece of metal. The key. My heart soared. I rushed to the cabinet, and the click of the lock was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. Inside were several thick folders. The first few were normal insurance policies, joint investment accounts. My heart sank. Was I wrong? Then I pulled out the last folder, tucked in the very back, with no label. My heart stopped. Inside was a copy of the deed for a luxury condo in Fulton Marquette address, matching the tracker perfectly. The owner was listed as Ethan Hayes, sole proprietor. The transaction had happened a year ago. He had bought a secret love nest. But that wasn't all. The next document was a bank statement from an account I never knew existed, in his name only, with a massive amount of money funneled into it. Money. And the final document made me feel like I'd been struck by lightning. It was a draft of a new will, written just a few months ago. In it, he bequeathed all his personal assets' secret bank account. The condotum is Chloe Becker. That woman. That conniving homewrecker. I gripped the papers. My knuckles white. Rage, pure and hot, rose in my throat. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to steal everything from me, to throw me away after I had helped him build his empire and start a new life with her. My hatred for him reached its peak. The thought of a simple divorce vanished. No, I would not let this end quietly. I quickly photographed every single page. This was the ultimate weapon, the evidence that would leave him with no escape. I put everything back, locked the cabinet, and hid the key. I walked out of his office with a shattered heart, but in that brokenness was a resolve harder than diamond. Ethan, you started this game. Don't blame me for being cruel, because the special dinner I'm about to serve you will be the most expensive meal of your life. A week later, with the evidence that could end his entire world in my possession, I knew it was time to close the final act. I chose Friday night as Judgment Day. That morning, I sent Ethan a cheerful text, "Hurry home tonight. I have a surprise for you." He replied instantly, full of enthusiasm. Really? What is it? Give me a hint. I scoffed at his naivety. No hints. It wouldn't be a surprise then. Let's just say it's good news you're going to love. Good news for me. Perhaps. All day. I wasn't in the kitchen cooking. I was making more important preparations. I confirmed the plan with Maya and my lawyer, Ms. DeMarco. Everything was ready. For the special meal, I didn't cook. I ordered takeout from their favorite Placita fancy Italian restaurant, from the credit card receipt, and I made one final, crucial phone call. Hello, Chloe. It's Alara, I said, my voice dripping with honey. I'm having a talk with Ethan tonight about our future, and since it involves you directly, I thought it would be best if you joined us for dinner. That way, we can all be on the same page. Are you free? There was a long, suspicious pause, but my words "our future" involves you directly must have ignited her hopes. She probably thought this was it, the moment I would gracefully step aside. I'm free. She finally agreed. Wonderful. See you at 7. I chirped, hanging up with a cold smile. The stage was set. At 7 sharp, Ethan arrived, holding a large bouquet of red roses. For the most wonderful wife in the world. He beamed. So, what's the good news? Patience, I said, taking the flowers. We have one more guest. Just then, the doorbell rang. I opened it to reveal Chloe, dressed to the nines as if for a date. When Ethan saw her, his face went white. Chloe, what are you doing here? He shot a confused, angry look at me. I invited her, I said calmly. I told you. This is about us, all three of us. I ushered her inside and closed the door on the tense, suffocating silence. What is this? Alara, Ethan demanded. Let's all sit down for dinner first, I said with a smile, leading them to the dining table, beautifully set with their favorite Italian food and lit by candles. I poured them both a glass of the expensive Pinot Grigio. A toast, I said, raising my glass of water. To the future. They drank, their faces masks of anxiety. The silence was deafening. Finally, Chloe couldn't take it anymore. The food is delicious, she stammered. Of course. I smiled at her. I ordered it from your favorite place. She froze, a forkful of pasta halfway to her mouth. Enough? Alara, Ethan finally snapped. What do you want? Stop the games and just say it. My smile vanished. My eyes turned to ice. Games? The games I've played for a few months can't compare to the one you've been playing for years. Ethan. I stood up and retrieved two thick file folders from the kitchen counter. I walked back and dropped them on the table with a loud thud that made them both jump. The surprise isn't here, I said flatly. Go ahead. Open it. With trembling hands, Ethan opened his folder. He saw the credit card statements, the hotel selfies, the secret condo deed, the will. His face drained of all color. He sat frozen, speechless. Chloe opened hers. It contained all the same evidence with one extra document on top. A set of divorce papers. This is my good news, I announced into the terrifying silence. I've decided to give you your freedom, Ethan, so you can be with the person you truly love. I paused, then turned to Chloe. And you, Chloe, this is my gift to you, so you can see the real man you were willing to destroy your dignity for. A man who lied to me for years, and would have done the same to you. Chloe looked from the papers to Ethan's face, her own filled with confusion and pain. This isn't true. Is it? Ethan, she whispered. He had no answer. And here's the final gift. I pulled a pen from my pocket and placed it on the divorce papers in front of him. Sign it, I commanded. Sign it, and this pathetic charade can finally be over. You two can go be happy on the ruins of my life, just like you wanted. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Alara, don't do this, I'm sorry. Your apology is worthless, I said, my voice like ice. The land, the money you stole, that's all marital property. With this evidence of adultery, my lawyer says I can sue you and your mistress for a fortune. Chloe gasped, realizing she was now implicated. But I won't. I continued. I just want what is mine. Sign the papers, which include a settlement agreement my lawyer has prepared, and I will walk away with my half. If you don't, we'll see each other in court, and I guarantee you, the story of the famous architect Ethan Hayes and his affair will make for very entertaining news. Your career, and your key colleague's career, will be over. I had given him a choice with no choice at all. Lose half, or lose everything. After a long, agonizing silence, Ethan slowly picked up the pen. With a shaking hand, he signed his name. The moment he was done, it was over. The play had ended. The scratch of the pen on paper was the sound of my old life ending and my new one beginning. A dead, empty silence filled the room. Ethan stared at his signature. Chloe stared at him. Her dreams shattered. Suddenly, Ethan erupted. "Are you happy now?" he roared, sweeping the folders off the table. "Are you satisfied? Destroying my life?" He stood, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Why did you have to be so cruel?" I watched him, feeling nothing but pity. "The person who destroyed everything was you?" "Ethan," I said coldly. "You started the game. I just ended it. You lied to me." Chloe shrieked at Ethan, her own rage exploding. "You said you loved me. You said you would leave her. You are a liar. I did it for you." "Chloe," he yelled back. "I was building our future. A future with a pathetic, cheating liar." She laughed through her tears. "I was a fool to believe you." Their war had begun. They screamed at each other, tearing each other down with vicious accusations. The love they thought they had, built on lies and selfishness, crumbled before my eyes. I didn't need to say another word. Quietly, I turned and walked out of the dining room. I went to the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase I had packed days before. It held only simple clothes, my journals, and a small photo of me with my parents on my graduation day, a reminder of who I was before him. I rolled the suitcase through the living room, past their raging fight. They didn't even notice me leave. I stopped at the front door and took one last look at the home I once loved. Now, it was just a battlefield. Goodbye to my broken dream. I opened the door and walked out, never looking back. The sound of the suitcase wheels on the pavement was the sound of my freedom. I waited for the elevator, my mind a blank slate. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't sad. I was just a survivor who had escaped a burning building. The elevator doors closed, sealing off my past for good. I drove aimlessly through the city lights of Chicago. The night's events were playing in my head, but I didn't cry. The tears were gone. I finally stopped in front of a familiar building, Maya's. I called her. "It's over. Maya, I'm outside. Stay right there." Minutes later, she ran out and wrapped me in a tight hug. In the safety of my friend's arms, the tears finally came. A torrent of release, washing away all the pain, anger, and grief. "It's okay, Elara," she soothed, rubbing my back. "You got through it. It's really over now." That night, for the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. I dreamed of myself as a little girl, running free in a field of wildflowers. Months later, time had worked its magic. The wound in my heart had healed, leaving only a faint scar as a reminder of the lesson learned. I had my own small, sunny apartment. It wasn't a palace, but it was mine. I didn't go back to translating. I found a new passion, cooking. I started a small social media page called Alara's Table, posting pictures of my daily creations and the stories behind them. It grew slowly at first, then exploded. People connected with my story of rebuilding a life from scratch. Soon, I was running a small, successful home catering business. I had found my value again. A value that came from my own two hands, not from being someone's wife. One afternoon, about a year after I left, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was Ethan. He looked terrible, thin, haggard, his clothes wrinkled. The confident architect was gone, replaced by a broken man. I hesitated, then opened the door. He looked at me, his eyes full of shame. "Elara, I wanted to say I'm sorry. My life is ruined. Chloe left me. My reputation is gone. I have nothing." He looked up, his eyes wet with tears. "I miss you, Elara. I miss your cooking. I miss our home. I was a fool. Please, can I come back? Give me one more chance." His words didn't stir my heart. I felt no anger, no hatred, only a quiet, distant pity. I gave him a small, genuine smile, a smile of forgiveness. "I forgive you, Ethan," I said softly. His eyes lit up with hope. "Really?" "Yes," I continued. "I forgive you so that I can move on in peace, not so we can go back. Our story is over, Ethan. I'm happy now, with my new life. I hope, one day, you can be happy too without me." I gave a slight nod, a final goodbye, and gently closed the door, shutting the last chapter of my past forever. I walked back into my kitchen. The warm, fragrant scent of spices filled the air. I looked at the neatly packed meals for my customers. at the fresh rosemary growing on my balcony. And I smiled. A real smile. A smile of happiness, peace, and pride. A smile. In a kitchen that was all my own.